The kingdom of Ashenvale had never known such darkness. Black smoke choked the stars as enemy catapults hurled flaming pitch over the stone walls. Captain Dorian Vale pressed his back against a crumbling pillar, sword slick with blood, watching the palace's eastern wing collapse in a shower of sparks and screaming timber. He'd served Queen Alara for 7 years, since he was barely 20 and she, newly crowned at 23. He'd watched her transform from an uncertain girl into a monarch who commanded respect with steel in her voice and compassion in her verdicts. But he'd kept his admiration professional, buried deep where it couldn't complicate his duty. Tonight, duty demanded everything. "The Queen is still inside!" A guard stumbled past, clutching a gash across his ribs. "3rd floor, western chamber! The stairs are gone!" Dorian's heart seized. The western wing was an inferno. He could see flames dancing behind the stained glass windows, each pane shattering like frozen screams. Every instinct told him to fall back, to regroup with the remaining forces. The kingdom needed its soldiers. But Alara was in there. He sheathed his sword and sprinted across the courtyard, dodging falling debris and arrows that hissed past his ears. The palace entrance yawned before him, belching smoke. He pulled his cloak over his mouth and plunged inside. The heat hit him like a physical blow. Tapestries depicting Ashenvale's history curled and blackened on the walls. The grand staircase, where he'd stood guard during countless royal audiences, was a cascade of fire. He veered left, remembering a servant's passage, and took the narrow stairs 3 at a time. 2nd floor. The smoke was thicker here, clawing at his lungs. He heard timber groaning, the death rattle of a dying building. 3rd floor. The hallway was an oven. Through the haze he saw the ornate door to the Queen's chambers, still intact but surrounded by advancing flames. "Ilara!" Her title fell away in his desperation. He kicked the door open. The room was filled with smoke, but he could see her silhouette near the balcony. She'd smashed through the glass, gulping fresh air, her gown torn and soot-stained. She turned, and their eyes met. In that instant, something passed between them that had nothing to do with monarch and soldier. It was recognition. 2 souls seeing each other clearly for the first time, despite 7 years of proximity. Dorian. His name on her lips was relief and something warmer. The floor beneath her feet cracked ominously. Without thinking, he crossed the distance between them in 4 strides and swept her into his arms. She gasped, her hands instinctively clutching his shoulders. "Hold tight," he commanded, and she did, pressing against him as the floor began to give way beneath them. Dorian's muscles burned as he held Queen Alara against his chest, her weight slight but precious. The floor groaned beneath them, tiles buckling from the heat rising from below. He had seconds to choose: the blocked corridor behind them, or the servants' stairwell to the right, which was rapidly becoming a chimney. "The stairwell," Ilara said, as if reading his thoughts. Even now her voice carried authority, but it trembled slightly. "It's our only chance." He adjusted his grip, one arm beneath her knees, the other supporting her back, and ran. The moment his boot left the Queen's chamber, the floor collapsed behind them with a deafening crash. Ilara buried her face against his neck, her breath hot against his skin. He felt her heart hammering. Or perhaps that was his own. The narrow stairwell was choked with smoke. He descended blindly, each step a gamble. A beam crashed down in front of them, spraying embers across his armor. He pivoted, shielding her with his body as sparks singed his cloak. "Dorian, your arm," she started, noticing blood seeping through a tear in his sleeve. "Later," he growled, not breaking stride. They emerged on the 2nd floor into chaos. Enemy soldiers had breached the palace. 3 of them stood between Dorian and the exit, looting the royal treasury. They turned at the sound of his boots, eyes widening when they recognized the Queen in his arms. He had no free hand for his sword. Before the soldiers could react, Ilara twisted in his grasp, grabbing a decorative vase from a side table and hurling it with surprising accuracy. It shattered against the nearest soldier's helmet, disorienting him. Dorian used the moment to charge, shouldering through the gap between the other two before they could coordinate. Behind them, shouts erupted. Footsteps pounded after them. "The bridge," Elara urged, pointing ahead. "The old drawbridge over the moat, if it's still standing." The grand hall stretched before them, its vaulted ceiling raining burning debris. The drawbridge was visible through the main archway, but it was already beginning to collapse, its ancient chains melting in the heat. Dorian's legs pumped harder. The pursuing soldiers were gaining, their armor clanking. An arrow whistled past his ear, so close he felt its wind. They burst onto the drawbridge. Below, the moat churned, not with water, but with burning oil that the defenders had used against enemy siege towers. The heat was apocalyptic. The wooden planks beneath Dorian's feet were smoking, beginning to char. "It's not going to hold," Elara's fingers dug into his shoulders. "I know." Dorian didn't slow. The bridge swayed with each step. Behind them, the first pursuing soldier set foot on it, and the entire structure groaned in protest. Chains snapped with sounds like whip cracks. The bridge tilted, and Dorian threw himself forward in a desperate leap as the world seemed to fall away beneath them. They hit solid ground on the far side, Dorian rolling to absorb the impact while keeping Elara protected against his chest. Behind them, the bridge collapsed completely, taking the pursuing soldiers into the inferno below. For a moment they lay there in the grass beyond the palace walls, Dorian still holding her, both gasping for air. He could feel every curve of her body pressed against his, her chest rising and falling rapidly, her hands still gripping his armor as if she'd never let go. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice rough. "Only my pride," she managed, a breathless laugh escaping. "I should have been able to fight my way out." "You're alive. That's what matters." Their eyes met, and something sparked between them. Not the fire they'd just escaped, but something that had been building for 7 years. The refugee camp sprawled across the valley like a wound, tents and makeshift shelters housing those who'd fled Ashenvale's fall. Dorian had carried Elara here through the night, through enemy patrols and burning forests, until his legs nearly gave out. Now in a commander's tent hastily cleared for her use, he finally set her down on a simple cot. She didn't release him immediately. Her hands lingered on his shoulders, her green eyes searching his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. 7 years, she said softly. 7 years you've stood 3 paces behind me, silent and watchful. I never knew if you saw me as your queen or simply as duty. Dorian knelt to inspect a cut on her ankle, using the motion to hide his expression. "You are my queen." "That's not what I asked." Her hand touched his jaw, tilting his face up. The gesture was intimate, unprecedented. "When you came through that fire, the way you looked at me, I need to know, Dorian, was it duty, or was it something more?" He should lie. Protocol demanded it. A captain didn't harbor feelings for his monarch. It complicated everything, compromised objectivity. But they'd just survived an inferno together, and the rules of the old world seemed meaningless now. "Both," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's always been both. From the day you stopped to bind a stable boy's injured hand when the council was waiting. From the night you stood in the rain and wept for soldiers who'd fallen in battle. I told myself it was admiration, respect for a just ruler." He paused, his hand moving to cover hers against his face. "But tonight, when I thought I might lose you..." She silenced him by leaning forward and pressing her lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them aware they were crossing a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. Then Elara deepened it, her fingers threading through his hair, and Dorian's careful control shattered. He pulled her close, years of suppressed longing pouring into the kiss. She tasted of smoke and something sweet, her body fitting against his as if they'd been designed for this. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I need to tell you something," Ilara said, resting her forehead against his. Something I should have admitted long ago. Every council meeting, every royal function, I always found you in the crowd. Your face was the one that gave me courage when I doubted myself. Your approval mattered more than any lords or ambassadors. Ilara! Her name felt sacred on his tongue. When the siege began and I knew death was coming, my greatest regret wasn't losing the crown. It was never telling you that I... She paused, vulnerability flickering across her features. That I loved you. That I'd loved you for years but thought it impossible. Queens don't marry their captains. Former queens can marry whoever they choose, Dorian replied, his hand cupping her face. She laughed, the sound breaking with emotion. Is that a proposal, Captain Vale? I'm a soldier. I have nothing to offer but my sword and my life. Those are the only things I want. She kissed him again, softer this time, tender. When she pulled back, tears glistened in her eyes. You carried me through fire, Dorian. You've carried me in ways you don't even realize. Every time your presence made me feel less alone. Every time your loyalty gave me strength. Outside, voices rose in commotion. Reality intruded on their moment. Ilara straightened, the queen returning to her posture even as she kept her hand entwined with his. They'll be looking for me. Decisions must be made about Ashenvale's future. But she didn't move toward the tent entrance yet. Instead, she studied Dorian's face as if memorizing it. Whatever comes next, war, exile, rebuilding, I need you beside me, not 3 paces behind. Beside me. Always, he promised. The War Council assembled at dawn. Generals with ash-stained uniforms, nobles who'd escaped with nothing but their lives, and advisors whose carefully maintained composure was beginning to crack. They gathered in the largest tent, standing because there weren't enough chairs, all eyes turning to the empty space where Queen Ilara should be. She entered with Dorian at her side, not behind her as protocol dictated, but beside her. His hand rested at the small of her back, a proprietary gesture that didn't escape notice. Whispers rippled through the assembly. Lord Brennan, the eldest counselor, cleared his throat pointedly. Your Majesty, we rejoice at your survival. Captain Vale's heroism will be remembered in the annals of our kingdom. Captain Vale's heroism deserves more than remembrance, Ilara replied, her voice carrying the steel that had cowed rebellious lords and negotiated peace treaties. It deserves recognition. More than that, it deserves my hand. The tent erupted. Voices overlapped in shock, protest, confusion. Your Majesty, surely you're overwrought. A marriage of strategic alliance is crucial to our survival. The bloodline must be considered. Ilara raised her hand, and silence fell. When she had been crowned at 23, some had doubted whether a young woman could command respect. 7 years had taught them otherwise. I have listened to strategic counsel my entire reign. I married once for alliance, to a man who betrayed our kingdom to its enemies. Her voice hardened. My husband died in the siege, cut down while attempting to open the gates from within. I will not make that mistake again. She turned to Dorian, and her expression softened in a way that made several counselors exchange uncomfortable glances. This man carried me through fire. Not because I commanded it, not because strategy dictated it, but because he valued my life above his own. He has proven his loyalty not with words but with blood and sacrifice. Her hand found his, fingers interlacing publicly, deliberately. I claim him as my husband by the ancient right of fire bond, a union forged in survival and sealed by choice. The fire bond is symbolic, Lord Brennan sputtered. A tradition from the old kingdoms, not a legal marriage. It is legal if I declare it so, Ilara countered. I am still your queen, am I not? Or has the council decided otherwise while I wasn't looking? The challenge hung in the air. Several lords looked away, unable to meet her gaze. General Aldrich, a scarred veteran who'd served Ilara's father, stepped forward. Your Majesty, I mean no disrespect, but practical concerns must be addressed. Captain Vale has no lands, no title, no political connections. How does this marriage strengthen our position to retake Ashenvale? Dorian tensed beside her, his jaw tightening. He'd known this would come, the reminder of his inadequacy, the practical reasons why loving a queen was impossible. But Ilara squeezed his hand. It strengthens our position by giving our people something they desperately need: hope. They need to see that loyalty is rewarded, that courage matters, that we still hold to our values even when our kingdom is ash. She paused, her green eyes sweeping the assembly. And they need to see their queen choose love over political expediency. We've had enough cold calculations. It's time for the heart to lead. A pretty sentiment, Lady Meredith murmured, but sentiment doesn't win wars. Doesn't it? Ilara challenged. Our soldiers didn't fight for political alliances or strategic trade routes. They fought because they believed in something worth protecting. This, she gestured between herself and Dorian, is worth protecting. Let our enemies see that we haven't lost what makes us human in the fight for survival. The tent fell silent. Then, unexpectedly, General Aldrich knelt. If my queen has chosen, then she has my support. Captain Vale has proven himself 100 times over. One by one, others knelt. First the soldiers, then some of the younger nobles. The older councillors remained standing, their disapproval evident, but they were outnumbered. Lord Brennan's face was pinched. This is irregular, Your Majesty, highly irregular. These are irregular times, Ilara replied. Now, shall we discuss actually retaking our kingdom? Or would you prefer to debate my personal life further? They held the ceremony at sunset in the ruins of Ashenvale's old temple, which had somehow survived the siege intact. The gods' blessing. Some whispered on this unconventional union. Refugees gathered in the scorched courtyard, soldiers in battered armor standing alongside nobles in borrowed finery. The kingdom had lost everything, but they could still witness their queen marry for love. Ilara wore a simple white gown, donated by a merchant's wife. No crown adorned her head, that had melted in the palace fires, but flowers from the valley were woven through her dark hair. She'd never looked more beautiful to Dorian, standing in the temple's broken archway with sunset painting her skin gold. He wore his captain's uniform, cleaned as best as possible, his sword at his side. When the priestess asked if he came to this union freely, his voice rang clear. I do, with my whole heart. And do you, Ilara Thorne, Queen of Ashenvale, take this man as your husband, to stand beside you in all things? Ilara's eyes never left Dorian's. I do, not as my subject, but as my equal, not as my protector, but as my partner. The priestess bound their hands with a silk cord. The fire bond is ancient and sacred, she intoned, born of the belief that those who face death together are forever linked. Speak now your truths. Dorian's voice was low but steady. I vow to carry you through every fire, literal or otherwise. I vow to stand beside you when the world crumbles, and to help you rebuild what's been lost. I vow to love you not as a queen but as Ilara, the woman who wept for fallen soldiers and showed mercy when hardness would have been easier. Ilara's eyes glistened. I vow to value your counsel as much as any lord's. I vow to build a kingdom where love isn't weakness but strength. I vow to remember that you saw me, truly saw me, when I was just a girl trying to fill her father's crown. Her voice caught. I vow to love you, Dorian Vale, with the same courage you showed when you ran into fire for me. The priestess smiled. Then by the old laws and the new, I declare you husband and wife. May your bond be as unbreakable as the fire that forged it. Dorian pulled Ilara close and kissed her as the crowd erupted in cheers. In that moment, titles and protocol fell away. They were simply two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos, who'd chosen love when the world offered nothing but ashes. That night, in a modest chamber hastily prepared for them, they were finally alone. Ilara unbuckled Dorian's sword belt with trembling fingers, her breath catching as he pulled her close. "Are you nervous?" he asked, pressing his forehead to hers. "Terrified," she admitted. "Not of you, of how much I want this, how much I want you." He kissed her softly, then deeper, his hands learning the curve of her waist, the silk of her skin. They undressed each other slowly, reverently, years of longing finally given permission to exist. When they came together, it was with the tenderness of first love and the passion of souls who'd waited too long. Later, as Ilara lay with her head on Dorian's chest, listening to his heartbeat, she whispered, "They'll say I'm foolish, that I chose poorly." "And what do you say?" His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I say I chose the man who ran into fire for me. The man who saw me not as a crown, but as a woman worth dying for." She tilted her face up to kiss his jaw. "I say I chose wisely." Outside, Ashenvale's refugees settled into uneasy sleep, their kingdom lost but not their hope. Their queen had shown them that even in darkness, love could light the way forward. And in the morning, they would begin the hard work of rebuilding, not just walls and throne rooms, but a kingdom founded on something stronger than politics. A kingdom founded on the bond forged when a soldier carried his queen through fire and she called him her husband. The End.